to repeat that. Just recently, the U.S. administration thought the use of cluster munitions to be a war crime. They used to say that publicly. Right now, the U.S. is supplying cluster munitions to the battlefield in Ukraine, all while saying that neither U.S. nor Russia has signed the Convention on Cluster Munitions. But this is not what I'm talking about. I'm saying that in the past, they used to say that it was a war crime, but they're the ones supplying the cluster munitions right now. And they don't give a damn about what others think about them. They only serve their own interests. They have made the calculations, the 155 caliber munitions are running out, and it's difficult to produce, both in the US and Europe, and they are providing what they have in store. If they've got cluster munitions, that will do. Depleted uranium munitions, that will do too. So that is where the war crime is. And, well, they said it was the crime, and they're the ones doing that. But it's of no use. Well, they've been providing cluster munitions for quite some time. Yes, it deals some damage to us. Now they're going to supply the depleted uranium munitions, and it's going to infect the environment. Grossi said there would be no infection, no contamination. Well, we know what's going to happen. There is going to be some contamination there. And in this regard, well, it's been quite some time since the British have been providing these kinds of munitions. Has it changed anything? So, no, it hasn't changed anything. F-16 supply is going to change anything? No. It's not going to change anything. You know, there is going to be an electoral cycle, and they are preparing for that, and they are pushing the Ukrainians to show some results because they have no pity for Ukrainians. And strange as it may sound, the Ukrainian leadership does not care. It does not have any pity for their own citizens, for the soldiers. They are simply sending them to that massacre. Is it going to prolong the conflict? Yes, it is. Well, let me tell you a story. Just recently, as a result of armed clashes on our territory, the Federal Security Service eliminated several combatants, and the others were taken, they were captured. And it turned out that it was a sabotage group from the Ukrainian Special Services. They were interrogated. They responded that their goal was to do damage to one of our nuclear power plants. They were supposed to destroy a power line. Their objective was to sabotage the energy unit. And it had not been the first attempt of theirs. And they responded during the interrogation and said that they had been prepared by British instructors. Do they understand what they're doing? Are they trying to provoke us? To make us respond against Ukrainian energy facilities? And does the British leadership know what their special services are doing? Maybe they are not aware of that. Well, I agree, it's possible. And maybe the special services of Great Britain are acting at the behest of the U.S. Special Services. We know the beneficiary. Well, they did know what Chernobyl was like. But after what I've just said, they're going to say that once again I'm trying to blackmail them or whatever. But what I'm saying is truth and nothing but the truth. So, yes, these people were interrogated and they gave us the answers. And they were not forced to make these confessions. The British Special Services know that what I'm saying right now is the truth. And I don't understand What's the stance of the British leadership on that? And, you know, such occurrences are truly concerning because they are going beyond the pale. But we're not going to strike against the nuclear energy facilities. I'm saying that maybe they're trying to provoke us. Madam Vice President, a question to you. You have spoken about cluster munitions. I think the Vietnam War ended in 1975. Right now, those bombings in Lao PDR, how much did they affect the lives of common people? And do you still feel that influence, that impact?
On clustered munitions, as well as unexploded ordnance, I think there are so many varieties that we have not yet been able to clear. And we have been heavily affected by this unexploded ordnance. And we have been receiving humanitarian support as well as technical assistance from Russia, as well as from international organizations. And yet we have not yet been able to clear the land. And one of the most devastating impact on the people, on our people, is injury. And then it also caused the loss of life of parents, and then resulting in a number of orphans in Lao PDR. And thirdly, this unexploded ordnance have been an obstacle to agricultural development, and usually the arable areas are heavily affected by cluster munitions. And therefore, the Lao government has been attaching great importance to address these humanitarian issues in partnership with Russia as well as with international organizations.
And does the government of Lao PDR has an estimate how many times it's going to be required in order to fully demine the territories?
The war in Laos lasted for over 30 years, and it is one of the longest war in history. And the use of cluster munition was one of the tactics in that war. And we have not yet calculated as to how many years we can actually completely clear this unexploded ordnance. But of course, the Lao government has been working closely with international organizations and friendly countries to address this country as much as possible.
Thank you. Would you like to comment? No. I would just like to add that we are participating in the demining, but we're also training local specialists. We have already helped train 150 local specialists who are working in the field of demining. You know, I would like to ask you, Mr. President, about Armenia. A year ago, Prime Minister Pashinyan was here, and I listened to your conversations in the couloirs. And yesterday, I think the military exercises between Armenia and the U.S. started. Prime Minister's wife went to Kiev, and the Speaker of the Parliament also spoke very critically about Russia. So why this pivot? And how is it going to affect the state of affairs on the border between Azerbaijan and Armenia? Well, I wouldn't call that a pivot. We see and understand what is happening. We could talk along about that. We proposed our own options for settlement. I'm not going to hide that. I think it's very well known. Armenia used to be in control of 7 districts it put under its control after the conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia. We propose that they should come to an agreement with Azerbaijan so that 2 districts remain under the Armenian jurisdiction. But the Armenian leadership did not agree to that, even though we have been trying to persuade the Armenian leadership for decades, well, for 10 or 15 years. There were different options, but in the end, this is what it has boiled down to. When we asked, what are you going to do? They said, we're going to fight. In the end, it all resulted in the current state of affairs. But it's not just about the outcome of this last conflict. The thing is, Armenia's leadership essentially have recognized Azerbaijan's sovereignty over Nagorno-Karabakh. And in the Prague statement, it was enshrined and put on paper. We're aware of that. And right now, President Aliyev tells me, you know, Armenia has recognized that Nagorno-Karabakh belongs to us. The issue of the status of Nagorno-Karabakh has been resolved. It's no longer in suspense. Armenia has made the official statement considering the territory before 1991 to be all Azerbaijan's, and citing the figures, the surface figures that include the territory of Nagorno-Karabakh. And it was not our decision, it was the decision of the current leadership of Armenia. And right now they say that we have to address any issues on a bilateral basis if you want to deal with Karabakh. So Armenia has basically recognized that Nagorno-Karabakh belongs to Azerbaijan. Yes, there are also humanitarian issues as well as the issue of the mandate of our peacekeepers. It's true that the mandate is still in force, whereas humanitarian issues such as, the prevention of ethnic purges, those issues are very urgent, very much in force, and I fully agree with that. And the leadership of Azerbaijan is not interested in any kind of ethnic purges. Quite the contrary, it's interested in this process being as smooth as possible. And how justified are all the accusations that the Russia hasn't helped, the CSTO hasn't helped, there is a humanitarian catastrophe. But if they recognize that Nagorno-Karabakh is part of Azerbaijan, well, that's it. This is the key element of the problem.
The status of Karabakh has been determined by Armenia itself. That's it. There is no more problem there. And a private question. The president of Armenia talked to you because with friends he sent me a letter. We keep maintaining our contact. There is no problems whatsoever between us and Armenia and between me and Pashinyan. We keep constant contact. Yet another important question coming back to Ukraine again. They talk a lot about possible new mobilization in Russia, in our country. What can you say to those who are listening to us? In Ukraine, they have forced mobilization, one wave after another. And I don't know how many they've mobilized. We have organized partial mobilization. We have mobilized several hundreds of 200 of mobilized persons for the last 7 months, 6-7 months. Every month, a voluntary contracts to serve in the army, in the armed forces. 270,000 persons during this 6 or 7 months. It's in addition to partial mobilization. Yes, it's an addition. People come to military recruitment units and sign recruitment contract voluntarily, 270,000 persons. And this process is going on. Every day, from 1,000 to 1,500 persons come to sign voluntarily their recruitment contracts. That's what differ Russian people, Russian society from others. I don't know any other country where it could be possible. People in full conscience, they join armed forces. In today's situation, they do understand that at the end they will end up at the front line. And our men, our males, they do understand what they will face, that they could lose their lives or get wounded. They still do this voluntarily, protecting, defending our motherland. We've talked about elections. We had them in Zaporozhye and Kherson, among others, in Lugansk and Donetsk Republic. The environment was quite difficult, and the courage of those who actually organized this amazed me. When shelling started because our enemies tried to shell them, people go in the basements, and after that they went up and continue. And those stayed in line waiting for their opportunity to vote. Why I'm saying this? Because our heroes, our soldiers who are fighting over there, they do know whom they are defending. This is the key moment. We are defending our people. Soon we will come to an end, but I still have a couple of issues. On September 1st, a new manual on history was introduced. I will refrain from discussing it. I had an interview with Mr. Medinsky, but there is a certain quote. Life is more complicated than newspaper statements. And our historians will ask themselves what kind of steps of world leaders, including our leaders, were correct and timely, and in which situations we had to took other decisions. Let's not wait for the history judgment. What was done right, correct, and what not. Let's wait. Only future generations are capable of give their evaluation in an objective fashion. Well, Duke Potemkin wrote a letter to Catherine II, and in this letter he wrote about Crimea, when Crimea joined Russia. I'm not quoting, but the essence was the following. Time will come, and future generation will blame you that you were able to get Crimea joined Russia and you didn't do this, and you will be ashamed. National interests come first, and this is my most important guiding point, and I'm not ashamed because of that. Another question about Olympic Games in France next year. Before I ask it, let's applaud Danilo Medvedev. He was a finalist, and Russian and Serb played two Orthodox men. Let's applaud Danil. He was capable of doing this. I watched this game. There was no flag, there was no mentioning of Russia, and when the French Olympic Games were mentioned, it was said that there will be no Russian or Belarusian flags over next year. What could you say to our athletes for whom Olympic Games is the most important objective in their athletic lives? Well, I'll say the following. No doubt we have to be guided by the interests of our athletes, first and foremost. And each of them who trade themselves for these important events, they should take their own important decision. But talking about Olympic movement as such, I would say the following. Well, I believe that present leaders of international federation or Olympic Committee, they actually undermine the basic idea of Olympic movement. Olympic movement should consolidate people, not separate them. Olympic movement actually ended up in a trap of financial interests. Well, international athletic movement was commercialized, and the result is the following: sponsors, leading Western companies, who at the end are creating economic and financial basis for International Olympic Committee activities, and they are dependent on political structures and governments of their own countries. This chain actually led the Olympic movement, and international athletic activities are undermined. Records are not that important. What is important is for people to get united, and this function is no longer there. It's a pity. This or that, there will be alternative movements appearing. Nobody can do nothing with that. It's an objective thing. Like, for example, our Druzhba competition. We will organize competitions as part of BRICS, and they won't be politicized, and it will kill present international structures. They should be renovated. That's a pity what is going on, but we will keep defending the interests of our athletes, and we will offer them alternative opportunities, including on the basis of their financial results and achievement. Well, 55 athletes, they changed their Russian citizenship to another citizenship, together with Olympic athletes, more than 100. Do you understand these people? I've mentioned this already at the beginning of my answer. People spent dozens and dozens of years to achieve this important result, but due to certain political reasons, they cannot do this. But there is yet another element here. I don't know whether I can say this, but some claim that sport at an international level is like a reflection of war. Something is true about that. But an athlete at the highest level, when he earns a medal and he sees his flag and can hear its anthem, it's very important. So my last question. We started saying that our plenary session today, 10 years ago, it was claimed that Far East and Siberia for us is a priority. Same was said today. I'd like to look at our future and to think about Far East and Siberia, how Russia will look like in 10 years' time. Presently, we can see the certain reincarnation on new level comparing to USSR. We used to have pioneer movement, now we have the movement of the first, and we have the music of our Soviet anthem. In our economic achievements fair is organized, which will reflect what we used to have. So the certain image of our future is there. So what is the type of future image we can choose for Russia? You just said that for certain countries, the future image had to do with the fact that they used to be members of certain organizations like European Union, etc. Do you understand what does it mean? Their future image is not only related to their cooperation with somebody, but it is related to their full dependence from somebody. We don't want this. We don't want this in economic sectors. And nobody wants peace in Ukraine, because if a war stops, then somebody should be held responsible vis-a-vis people. But now nobody does this. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that after war, the restoration of the Ukrainian economy will start. No. Who will feed them? Our future depends on our own activities. Recently, I met young scientists, and they asked me, actually, we discussed this. So what we have discussed, I change a phrase a little bit, but the idea is there. Scientists are doing their scientific work. Industry works in industrial sectors, in agriculture, in industrial sectors. Artists, they create images which help us to protect our spiritual values. This all together will lead us to a result, no doubt about that. All this should be reflected in the image of our country, including in the security area, should be self-dependent. It doesn't mean that we will isolate ourselves from others. It means that together with our partners and friends, on the basis of integration with the majority of countries which reflect the majority of population on this planet, together with them, we will keep developing our own country, and we will make it stronger and stronger. I've mentioned already that industry, science, etc. But together with that, we should maintain the soul of Russia, our spirit, our multi-ethnic and multi-religious identity, this humanitarian element, together with science, education, and real production industry, will serve as basis for Russia to advance forward, understanding ourselves as a sovereign and fully independent state with huge perspective for development. And it will happen in spite of all the restrictions and limitations introduced against Russia. What they've expected, that our financial system would collapse, economy would be in ruins, factories would stop producing, a lot of people would lose their jobs. Nothing of that happened. We are now part of 5 biggest economies in the world from the point of view of purchasing power, etc. And we have all the opportunities to keep advancing. Yes, our inflation is a little bit higher, but it's still in the framework of certain indices. Our unemployment is 3%, historical minimum. We've never had this. Well, we have certain other issues related to this in the area of labor resources, but we keep solving them. For the first time in recent years, the real income of our people keep growing, and their income is growing and their real salary is growing. Together, these elements will make us believe that Russia not only has solid future, but we will have future which will be based on the efforts of all our multi-ethnic people. At the end, I'd like to say that it looks like an election program, but before December we cannot claim this. Thank you very much. We spent 3 hours discussing many issues, but it's not possible to embrace what cannot be embraced. Thank you, Mr. Madam Deputy President. Thank you for coming, and all the best to everybody.